Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder on this first Sunday in November. In a little bit, we'll begin to see how many among us forgot to fall back. Hello, my name is Fred Cole. I'm very pleased to be the worship leader for today's service. We welcome all at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder. All of you are welcome. All of you are sacred. Whatever your past was like, whatever this present moment is like for you, we invite you to join us as we journey into the future together. And welcome to all who are, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to say welcome to you who are out there on the internet. We can take that out of the script for now. The chat box will be open if you need to get a message to us, however. If you are new online visitor, please email our office manager, Amy Zen, and let us know how you found us. You'll also find her email listed in the Zoom chat. Our church website has a great deal of information about UUCB,
recording in progress,
and our activities. Our theme for worship during the month of November is holding history. And 3 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of sitting down with our middle school youth to talk to them about UUCB's history. And I told them about the founding of the Unitarian Fellowship of Boulder in 1946 and about the Unitarian Sociables, which were part of the community fabric of Boulder City back in the 1880s and 90s. Where do we come from? Who are we? It's more than a hymn that we sing. It's a part and parcel of our humanity. Have you ever noticed how, when meeting a new person, often the first question that's asked is, "So, where are you from?" The creation stories abound in every culture and time. Oh, the Torah speaks of Adam and Eve, and the Kachinas dance their four worlds, and the Buddha sits beneath his bow tree. All of us know where we were born and remember the places where we have lived. Our beginnings are important to us. And each Sunday as we light our chalice, we hear a story about another person's unique beginning. It is important that we actively listen to these stories because all of our stories, taken together, is what binds us together in beloved community. It's the way that we begin and continue to hold our history. Now, please ensure your microphones remain muted as we join together for worship.
It's good to be with you in this, our second virtual service after 2.5 months of meeting outside. During this month of November, the COVID task force is working to figure out how we get back into the sanctuary safely again, looking at different air filtration systems, looking at the space that we have here and the capacity limits that hopefully and by plan can bring us back in safely in December. I'm glad to join with you virtually this morning, and I'm looking forward to being with you in person. I have news to share which you may have heard already, but when the news is this good, it's worth hearing again. After many years of working for Ingrid's freedom, she has received a 1-year stay of removal. And this means that for 1 year, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, won't arrest and deport her if she leaves her home here at the church where she and her kids have been living these last 4 years. Now, because this is just for 1 year, it doesn't mean the case is resolved, but it gives her the ability to come and go as she wishes, to run her own errands, to pick her kids up from school, to have parent-teacher conferences where the teachers don't have to come here to meet with her. It's a huge step forward. It doesn't include a work permit, so you can't join the job market at this time, and work permits can take 6 to 10 months. Still, this is the beginning of a new and very good chapter. For 4 years, the Sanctuary Now team and the Boulder Valley Sanctuary Coalition have recruited dozens of volunteers from this and other faith communities to fill roles as door volunteers and rides for kids and laundry and grocery shopping. And with the stay of removal, Ingrid can do these many things herself. And in the weeks ahead, Ingrid and Sanctuary Now are going to figure out what exactly do their roles look like now. The effort continues to allow Ingrid to pursue citizenship in the U.S., and it is a slow process. She and her lawyer work on her case from every possible angle. And given the continually shifting complexity of the immigration system, it's not as simple as saying with Biden in office, things are changed. With the continually shifting complexities, there's no timeline in a case like this. It may be the case that this one-year stay is not renewed in 2022, and she has to return living here full-time in Sanctuary, or it may be that her case is resolved within the year. There's no prediction to make. Her goal is to live and work independently, and we're here to support that, to accompany her, not tell her how to do it, to accompany her, just as we always have. 4 years ago, we did not know how long this process would be. We did not know where it would take us. Nonetheless, you made a commitment to accompany Ingrid through Sanctuary, a brave and a fundamental commitment which has not changed, even as her case has changed, even as her needs have changed, and regardless of what comes. We are with her. Estamos en la lucha. We're in the struggle. And though we don't know exactly when that will come to an end, we are in it and in this moment of celebration. Worship, said the Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams, worship is the experience of renewed loyalty to the Spirit of love and all its ways. We gather this morning, whoever we are, in our many rooms, we gather lifted up in joyful celebration, and we come carrying the weight of the people we have loved and lost, carrying the uncertainty of all the things not done, all the steps not taken. We gather, as we do each week, acknowledging that we need for ourselves, for our own health, a renewed loyalty to the Spirit of love. Because to be human is, of course, to fall short of perfection. And so we gather humbly and joyfully, knowing that we are enough and we are not enough, ready for renewal. Come, let us worship. One day, our story begins. One day, Taylor decided to build something new and something special and something amazing. And he was so proud. This is how our story for all ages begins today, called The Rabbit Listened by Corey Dorfeld. One day, Taylor decided to build something, and this kid built a tower of blocks taller than they were. But then, out of nowhere, because this is the sort of story with talking animals, a flock of crows came through and broke the whole thing down. And all of the work that he had done building a tower this high lay in ruins around him on the ground. Things came crashing down. Now, the chicken was the first to notice. Cluck, cluck, what a shame. I'm so sorry. Sorry this happened. Let's talk about it, talk about it, talk about it. But Taylor did not feel like talking. So the chicken left. And next came the bear. Oh, horrible. I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. I've been working on my bear impression. But Taylor didn't feel like shouting. He wasn't ready for that. So the bear left. Now, the elephant knew just what to do. I can fix this, said the elephant. I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. And we'll put it all back together again. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering. So the elephant left. One by one, they came. The hyena, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, what a mess. Let's throw this all away. And the snake, let's go knock down somebody else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing any of these things with anybody. So eventually they all left until Taylor was alone. And in the quiet, after they'd gone, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. And they sat in silence, just so, until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." And the rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. And the rabbit listened as Taylor shouted, and listened as Taylor remembered, and laughed and made plans to hide, and to throw everything away, and to ruin things for somebody else. And through it all, the rabbit never left. And then, when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build again. "I can't wait," said Taylor. "It's going to be amazing."
Now is the time that we ask you to prepare to light your chalice or candle there at home. We invite you to type into the chat box where your flame is being kindled, the street or neighborhood, or in what city. Connie Pearson is here to light our chalice this morning.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad that we can gather together as a community, even though it's online. Today, I would like to share with you some of my life experiences that have been a teacher for me. It seems that we will all experience challenging and sometimes overwhelming experiences, one way or another, some big, some small. Life breaks everyone in some way. I began my career as a registered nurse working in labor and delivery, then became a surgical and emergency room nurse, and later became a psychotherapist. Needless to say, I encountered many intense and stressful situations through the years in these work environments. But one of my own worst nightmares was a highway accident where the whole front end of our car was smashed up to the dash. I was 6 weeks pregnant, and Jerry and I were going to his parents' house to tell them we were expecting a baby. Although we had seat belts on, it was before shoulder belts. I hit the dash and cracked open my skull and broke my spine in multiple places. Jerry was protected by the steering wheel, but he did sustain a broken nose and bruises. Fortunately, our baby girl survived. As a psychotherapist, I became interested in how to support others going through stressful experiences, and I started training in trauma therapy. I was so excited to find that all the brain research, much had been learned how to deal with painful experiences by working with the brain and the body. And it helped me deal with my traumas too. Our car accident and witnessing the trauma and suffering of others cracked me open, literally and figuratively. It pushed me to go deeper in trying to understand what is life all about. The sleepwalker began to awaken. I started meditating and found a teacher who could help me begin to open to my true self. Of course, my spiritual journey is a long process, but I'm not sure I would have been motivated to find my way if it hadn't been for my own traumas and other people's traumas that inspired me to explore life in a deeper way. So in the end, these experiences have been an amazing gift and a great teacher for me. It reminds me of Leonard Cohen's famous quote, "There's a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in." And I would add, there's a crack in everything, and that's how we discover the light that has been there all along. So today, I light this chalice in celebration of the light that is within each of us right now, always has been and always will be.
We now invite those gathered in your various locations to join together in fellowship and community as we say aloud this congregation's covenant. We gather in fellowship to speak truth to each other, to reach out and touch one another, to care with each other, and to seek the truth divine. So be it.
Friends, will you take a breath with me? And another as we enter into this time for prayer and meditation, this moment for practice. Our invitation to practice this morning is to remember that connection, to trust in it, that each of us in our own separate houses, our own separate places where we gather, whatever room we're in by ourselves or with just a few others, nonetheless are a united and connected people, weaving ourselves into each other's lives, making one out of many, though it may not feel it quite at the moment. In that spirit, I invite you again to take a breath with me and feel the unity of all these other folks on Zoom this morning doing just the same. On this Sunday closest to Veterans Day, we recognize those among us here who are serving or who have served in the armed services, and also those lost in war. No matter how we stand on war and peace, it's fitting to pause and recognize our veterans and our dead. We do this in honor of the original intent of Veterans Day, not to glorify war, but in fact to do the opposite, to recognize its terrible cost, not to incite nationalistic fervor, but to look ever more fervently toward world community and living the dream of peace, which is not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice. We honor the living and we mourn the many, many dead. Amen. In this moment in the service where we gathered in person, I would invite you to come forward to take a stone worn smooth in the Boulder River and place it into the earth, the sacred land of the Ute and the Arapaho people, to symbolize the way our joys and our sorrows take their place among each other's and rest in the hand of something larger than ourselves. If we gathered in person, each of us would move quietly in line, would come to the front, would hold, would feel the weight and the coolness of that stone, would warm it with the heat of your body and place them together. We would lift up the blessings and concerns of this community. And in just a moment, as the music begins, I'll invite you to share those in the chat. As you feel moved, and remembering the chat is public, to call to mind the joys and the celebrations that are with you today and to share them, and to call to mind the sorrow and the loss that we carry equally, and to share that too, and in doing so, to let go of the isolation, to let go of that need and habit of carrying alone everything that's on your heart. And friends, to the joys and the sorrows that you share in the chat, we add Jessica Aldama and her newborn daughter, who died last month. They lived in a tent without permanent housing, barely a mile from this church. And they were among the 24 unhoused people who die every single year in Boulder, one of the most prosperous cities in the country. For all of your blessings and concerns that you share, for all of your heart work, we hold this compassionate space with love. And thank you for the ways you bless each other.
rivers of grace, forgiveness flows in these rivers, rivers of grace, flowing down, down, down to my soul. Come bathe in the healing rivers, rivers of grace. Come bathe in the healing rivers, rivers of grace. Come bathe in the healing rivers, rivers of grace, flowing down, down, down to my soul.
Ben and Deborah, I'm so glad I get to do worship with you both each week. Jonathan Shea, a clinical psychiatrist who works with veterans, wrote a 1994 book called Achilles in Vietnam, Combat Trauma and the Undoing of Character. And in it and in the years which followed, he focused specifically on articulating, on describing the undoing of moral character that can come in combat. He describes a moral injury as opposed to an injury of body or mind. And he says a moral injury can happen when three criteria are met. When one takes an action that betrays a sense of what's right, violence in war. One takes an action that betrays a sense of what's right while legitimately authorized to do so and in a high-stakes situation. So, for example, the soldier in combat who shoots and kills an enemy about to detonate a grenade is legitimately authorized to do so and in a high-stakes situation. And nonetheless, in the killing of another person, even if it was their job and that was the moment, nonetheless takes an action that betrays a sense of what's right in the world. I'll leave the examples at that level of abstraction. I have not served, and as one veteran says of his fellows, we are not helped through telling war stories to well-intentioned but voyeuristic civilians. There's a difference here between moral injury and other sorts of trauma. Take post-traumatic stress disorder. Many books, says one author, on veteran healing confuse and conflate these two, moral injury and PTSD, into one thing, but the difference between them is partly physical. PTSD occurs in response to prolonged extreme trauma. It's a fear, a victim response to danger. It produces hormones that affect the brain's amygdala and hippocampus, which control responses to fear, as well as regulating emotion and connecting fear and memory. And a sufferer often has difficulty forming coherent memory of traumatic events, or may even be unable to recall it. Symptoms might include flashbacks, or nightmares, or hypervigilance, or disassociation. But by contrast, one veteran describes moral injury, as, quote, the agony of inner judgment against oneself. Like living with a person you judge so harshly. As one commentator says, moral injury results when soldiers violate their core moral beliefs. And in then evaluating their behavior negatively, they feel they no longer live in a reliable, meaningful world and can no longer be regarded as decent human beings. And importantly, they may feel this. They may feel this, even if what they did was warranted and unavoidable. The consequences of violating one's conscience, even if the act was unavoidable, even if it seemed right at the time, can be devastating. And responses include overwhelming depression and guilt and self-medication through drugs or alcohol, feelings of worthlessness, remorse, despair, as if they lost their souls in combat and are no longer who they were. If that feels distant, if that's an abstraction, and the reality is, for me and so many of us who have never served, it may be. And let me take you back to Intro to Ethics 101 and the trolley problem. If you watched The Good Place, you know all about the trolley problem. But for those not up on their recent pop culture, on their several-year-old pop culture, here's how it works out. You are standing at the junction where a trolley coming down the hill can continue on its tracks or can be diverted off to the side tracks. The trolley coming down the hill, this is probably some very hilly place, has lost its brakes. So this thing is accelerating uncontrollably. There is no way to stop it. Certainly there's no way for you to stop it. The only thing you can do is decide to throw the lever that will switch the trolley from the path that it's on to a side track. The thing is, the path that it's on has, let's say, a field trip of school children filling the tracks. And the side path that you could pull the lever for it to go down only has, say, a couple of college students napping in the tracks for some reason. The sorts of examples that come in Intro to Ethics are often absurdities because they let us focus on the crux of the thing. Your decision, your choice in that moment is to let this thing plow onwards and kill dozens of people, or to flip the switch, to take action, to do something. But to do something which results in less harm, but still in harm. Now, let's say this feels in the moment like this is an easy choice to make, or let's say that after much reflection and agony, you make the decision to throw the lever and to divert this trolley to kill 2 people instead of dozens of people. You were perhaps authorized to do it. You were the only one in that moment who could make that decision. Certainly, it was a high-stakes situation, and probably it was even the right thing to do. Nonetheless, through your action, you've taken life and have to live with the consequences of being the person who did that. I invite you into this sort of exercise, into trying to put yourself into the situation, into exploring the hypothetical that lets us enter in. Because as civilians, taking moral injury seriously requires us letting go of our own quest for personal purity. It requires us letting go of the notion that, oh, this is a thing that happens to others and not to us, that I could never be the one to pull the trigger, that everything of what that combat experience might be happens to a person so basically different in kind from you and I as civilians as to be irrelevant. And my suggestion, my encouragement, my hope/admonition is to let go of the most important thing being your own moral judgment, to let go of the importance of being blameless, to let go of drawing a distinction between us and them, between the person who would do such an act and we ourselves. That's not what's at stake here. We talk about moral injury. We face history all month long in order to remember and remind ourselves that we are not fundamentally different in kind, that our hand could have been the one that pulled the trigger, defending our neighbor, our fellow, our comrade in an act that is both right and horrific. The invitation in any deep listening to difficult things is first to pause the impulse to judge, to pause that impulse which wants to use the life of another as the measuring stick against your own, which wants to use the experiences of another, not to hear them and understand them, but instead to prove our own self-worth, instead of affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to affirm our own blamelessness. But the universalist ideal and idea is that an accident of birth is not a difference in kind or in humanity. The invitation then is not to move away from folks who have had these experiences, but to come closer, like the rabbit coming up, just to listen, to come closer, despite the very real terror, despite the fear, despite the threat that it might pose to your own ego or self-understanding or sense of right and wrong. To come close and to listen deeply without judgment, without shame, without guilt, without the work being assignment of blame in severity and degree. But to listen, rooted in our conviction, rock solid, though difficult sometimes, that whether in a military family or a veteran or a peace activist or an indifferent civilian, we are one people connected in an interdependent web. None of us left behind, none of us less possessed of inherent worth and dignity. In their book, Soul Repair, Recovering from Moral Injury After War, Rita Nakashima-Brock and Gabriella Latini dig into the complexity of what it means to hold these sort of difficult stories of moral injury. They say, conversations about moral injury require deep listening, and in being open, we must be willing to take in what we hear as a part of ourselves, to be moved, even by what's difficult or painful to hear, and to struggle to understand profound questions of moral conscience. Hearing soul-bearing truth, they continue, hearing soul-bearing truth requires resiliency. To accept the worst things that human beings inflict on each other, to be present to anguish, and to let what we hear sink into us without judgment. Deep listening requires us to set our own needs aside and to offer simply respect. For we reach and change others, and we ourselves are changed when we plunge to the depths of our inner life, those depths that often lie beyond articulation. Each of our services this month takes up the theme of holding history, asks the question, what are we to do with the past? Next week, we dig into a difficult complexity of racism within our own denomination. And in the week that follows, we retell the founding myth of colonization, a Thanksgiving holiday story that has the best and the worst of us side by side. And then, at the end of the month, we'll welcome to the pulpit Vertus Robinson, a UU seminarian who digs into the red Georgia dirt of his enslaved ancestors. Holding history means holding complexity. It means holding the self-contradictions of our world. Brock and Latini observe that few major social institutions teach moral integrity and courage and personal discipline and humility. Few teach a sense of purpose and responsibility and commitment to the lives of others better than the armed services. And and none works so thoroughly to compromise, deny, dismantle, and destroy the very values it teaches. This is the paradox of war, not a problem to solve, but a paradox to live into. The human beings we know and care about volunteer for military service, and we send them off to war, and they return morally injured. They still belong to us. They are still the people we love. And we cannot build a better humanity, a different world, without facing that fierce, fiery angel of moral injury together. Holding history means deepening in relationship without easy answers, without guilt, without shame, without distancing. And we're up to it. In this congregation, one of the spiritual practices we cultivate is deep listening. That deep listening, hearing the heart stories of others without trying to fix or save or give advice, hearing the experience of others as if it is as real and complicated and whole and difficult as our own experience. That enables us to hear our histories, individually and collectively, to hear our histories not as problems to be solved, not as questions to be evaluated, but as a wilderness through which to travel together. Deep listening for facing history and for facing ourselves. Amen.
Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. When sorrow heals my soul and burdens make me strong, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. My sister in my heart, my brother in my song, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. And though the journey is long, the destination is clear. The troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. sisters sing my song. When hope awaits at every turn, I know we will go on.
Wow. During the month of November, we'll be sharing our plate collection with another local nonprofit, Bridge House. Here's Bess Schmall from our caring ministry to tell you a bit more about Bridge House and to introduce her guest.
Hello, everyone. One of the first things that I did upon joining UUCB in 2007 was volunteer with serving meals sponsored by the Bridge House. These dinners were held nightly in several local churches and served low-income but mostly homeless folks. I learned that UUC members had participated with this worthy organization for 25 years. UUC members have also enjoyed food from the community table kitchen and helped mentor clients in their Ready to Work program. Their mission statement says it all. Quote, Bridge House believes in, respects, and empowers people who are experiencing homelessness. They connect them to housing and employment opportunities so they can realize and embrace their future. End quote. And now I would like to introduce Dee Dee, who is a staff member at Bridge House, and she has an inspiring story for us to hear. Thank you for your generous support.
Hi, my name is Dee Dee. I am a transitional case manager at the Ready to Work program for Bridge House. I came to Boulder 10 years ago. My husband and I, we were homeless, and Bridge House helped us and got us housed within about 4 months. And then 7 months later, Bridge House hired me. I come from the streets of Denver. I was homeless for 10 years, and we needed a change from I come from, just like everybody else, from addiction and broken families and stuff like that. And we came to Boulder, and Bridge House assisted us in getting housed. My husband now works at CU, and I currently work for Bridge House. I enjoy my job. I've been doing this for quite a while. It'll be 10 years in a few days. I get to help the organization house people that housed me. And that's my passion. I'm really good at my job. I think Bridge House is one of the best organizations ever. Like I said, I was homeless on the streets in Denver for 10 years, reaching out to different organizations. No one helped us, but Bridge House made us feel welcome, and they treated us like family. It was an amazing program to go through. I wish the Ready to Work program had been in effect back then, because we would have probably been their first clients. Boulder is a great community. They welcomed us with open arms. Nobody was like, I was kind of afraid, I'm gonna be honest, because this is a different culture for me. And they welcomed me with open arms. Everyone was nice, treated us nice with respect. I actually worked on Pearl Street when I first got here, and that was a great experience for me. And then Bridge House came along, and they decided they wanted to hire me. I didn't even fill out an application. I didn't even do an interview. They just hired me. You know, I absolutely don't know where I would be today had it not been for Bridge House. It's an amazing organization, and I love the fact that they've been around for so long, because a lot of times these kind of organizations, nonprofits, they go away and they don't offer the services, but we have managed to enhance the services that we offer to homeless people, and I think that's amazing.
You can make a donation now using the link posted in our chat, by sending a check to UUCB, or by scanning the QR code on the next slide with your mobile phone. I invite you to give as generously as you are able. Thank you. We accept this offering with gratitude. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace and love to the Boulder community. Thank you once again.
Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, I know we will go on. We extinguish the light of our chalice here physically, but it burns bright inside each one of us to go out and be a blessing in the world. Amen.
Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way. Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take, may love guide you on your way.
Well, yesterday afternoon, at noon, the online auction closed, but our fabulous feasts go on. This Sunday, there will be no Zoom breakout rooms. This is to give you all a chance to refresh that cup of coffee or whatever, and then come back at noon. However, it is a separate link to get to the live auction, and there's some wonderful things there. Baskets of wine, getaway weekend, and several other things. So come back, enjoy the live auction, and Barb and I will see you all again next week. And you can enjoy the music for a few moments more.
Recording stopped.
Oops. That's wrong.